Dublin, Wisconsin was a supposedly small town that allegedly disappeared sometime in the late 1980s or early 1990s. No one knows where exactly in Wisconsin it was located, or how it vanished. There are no official records of the town's existence, and there are no mentions of it in any maps. The only records of the town's existence are alleged souvenirs bearing the town's name, and online accounts of people who claim to have had relatives who lived there, as well as a photo of a family supposedly recovered from Dublin. Mentions of Dublin began circulating on 4chan and other online forums in the late 2010s. These discussions typically involved users asking if anyone had any information on the existence of the town. One popular reply was, "You live in Wisconsin, just ask around." Most people born before the 90s will remember the city of Dublin. Some even have shirts, mugs, etc. that reference it. But no other information was given. As the mystery of Dublin, Wisconsin began gaining more traction, more users came forward to share personal accounts. One person, Jamie Ivanov, wrote, "I just learned of all the noise surrounding Dublin, and I think I can add some insight. Dublin was a small town in Wisconsin that housed a lot of military families. My father lived there for a year or two and spoke of it occasionally. The main thing I remember is that it had to do with Project Sanguine in the early 60s. I don't think it was X-Files type stuff, but the town was destroyed after an incident. I thought they were digging up a ton of land for something and they flooded the town or something, but this is a rehashed secondhand memory from years ago." Another user recounted something similar. "I think you make a good point, but Dublin was very real. My father used to mention it occasionally before he passed, and the only reason I remember it is because I found it ironic that a town named Dublin was populated by almost exclusively military personnel and their families. I will dig around for a shirt when back home next in early September. If I remember correctly, the town was built as part of Project Sanguine in the mid to late 60s. Maybe everyone left when the project was cancelled, but I thought something went very wrong. You can only dig up that much turf for so long before you're bound to have problems." Both accounts mention Project Sanguine. Project Sanguine, devised by the US Navy in the 1960s, aimed to create a way to communicate with deep-sea submarines anywhere around the world. To do this, the Navy proposed burying a massive grid of cables under 41% of Wisconsin, ultimately turning its bedrock layer into a gigantic antenna. During the Cold War, nuclear-powered submarines would stay submerged underwater for months at a time, and since there wasn't a good way to send signals to these submarines, since radio waves don't travel well through water, the project would have been an antenna for transmitting extremely low frequency waves that can penetrate through water and reach the submarines. However, the project never took off due to the environmental impact it would have, as well as the potential cost of such a large-scale project. Instead, a scaled-down version dubbed Project ELF was implemented. It involved two transmitters, one at Clam Lake, Wisconsin, and the other at Republic in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The project operated from 1989 to 2004. Both users shared their personal experiences with the town of Dublin, hinted at the town being flooded, either accidentally or purposefully, during the construction of Project Sanguine. However, that couldn't be the case, since Project Sanguine never took off, and so there was no digging involved which could have led to a flood. As for Project ELF, the cables were strung above ground, not underground, so there wouldn't have been the need for digging underground. Many theories emerge about what might have happened to Dublin, from the town up and vanishing into thin air, to the residents simply leaving due to a failing economy, or a military town that was abandoned right after the operation ran its course. However, evidence points to this likely being an internet legend. There are no mentions of Dublin online prior to 2017, with the first mentions of it starting on 4chan and Tumblr. As for the various souvenirs in the supposed photo taken at Dublin, there's no proof of their validity. It remains unclear whether Dublin actually existed, or if it was some sort of internet legend, born sometime in the late 2010s. A similar story is that of Urkhammer, Iowa. In 2015, Colin Hudson shared a story of Urkhammer on his website Strange State. The story had apparently been found by his mother while cleaning out her old emails. According to the story, in the early 1920s and 30s, the town of Urkhammer was a standard small town located in Iowa. However, in 1928, aerial photographs of the town showed that where the town should have been, there were only empty fields surrounded by farms. No streets, homes, or stores appeared in the photos. A week later, a tourist passing through town filled up his car at the Urkhammer Esso station, but just 2 miles outside the town, his gas tank was completely empty. He walked back to the gas station to demand a refund, but no matter how far he walked, the town remained the same distance ahead of him. An hour or two later, another driver picked him up and replenished his fuel supply. However, the man remained shaken after the incident. In 1929, The Davenport Clarion Sun Telegraph reportedly published both these stories, but since the story appeared in the same issue as the Wall Street stock market crash, there was barely any reaction from the public. Throughout 1930 and 1931, Urkhammer remained undisturbed, but saw fewer visitors, the majority of which were farmers trying to make a living by traveling to larger cities. In 1932, Illinois farm families fleeing the Dust Bowl camped near Urkhammer. Two men from the group pooled together the group's money and decided to head into Urkhammer to purchase the necessary supplies. They headed to the general store, but each time they tried to mount the steps leading to the store, their feet would pass directly through the lowermost step. Thinking there was some sort of plot to prevent outsiders from shopping, the men took a nearby board and decided to use it to get to the store. But to their surprise, this time, their feet passed through both the board and the steps. Terrified, the men rushed back to their camp, informing them of what had happened. The camp didn't believe the men, and decided to send a dozen of the camp to the town's general store. Unfortunately for them, they had the same eerie experience. The group quickly departed from the town, but the story quickly circulated, capturing the attention of a group of state police who were then ordered to investigate the phenomenon. The police headed for the Urkhammer Sheriff's office, and as one of them decided to knock on the door, to his surprise, his hand passed directly through it. Following this incident, the town began its gradual decline with each passing day. Passers-by noted the absence of children playing in the town, and the decrease in houses and barns. Then in 1932, a farmer, Phineas Bumph, passed by the town at dawn with his cargo of produce, only to be greeted with emptiness. Where the town had stood were only abandoned fields and long rotted fences. This story, like Dublin, Wisconsin, seems to be an internet urban legend, considering the first mention of the town was in 2015 on the Strange State website, and the author of the website himself believes the story to be fictional. The Davenport Clarion Sun Telegraph newspaper that allegedly published accounts of the town never even existed. On January 11, 2019, Tumblr user Queen Kachidora wrote a blog post where they described a recent visit to the dentist. During the appointment, the dentist was surprised by something inside their mouth and asked, "Can I ask you a question? What the hell is in your mouth?" OP was in awe, especially when the hygienist and assistant came over to take a look and also appeared surprised. Many Tumblr users were curious as to what exactly was in OP's mouth. In a follow-up blog post, they addressed the other users' curiosities with a story. OP began by explaining that their hometown was unusually strange. From the outside, it looked like a typical suburban town, but once someone spent enough time there, it became clear that something wasn't quite right. A lot of the people were just off. Everyone knew to avoid the farmland surrounding the area, especially at night. Locals called it the cuts, and people would disappear out there all the time, or get shot at by the especially weird people that lived out there. According to OP, the news was a thing of horror. The town didn't really have normal crime like robbery. Instead, the headlines were things like, a kid was kidnapped by local residents and tortured in a house around the corner. A random person was chased down and shot for sport in a really nice neighborhood. Someone was to death by a bull while out car shopping. Apparently all these were real. Everyone in town was on something, and the whole town sat dangerously close to a government site where they tested nuclear weapons and chemical agents. The only reason OP shared all this backstory was to explain that this strange town was where they had gotten their retainer. After getting braces, they were fitted with a permanent retainer on their bottom teeth. Since many other kids their age had the same type of retainer, it never seemed unusual at the time. Years later, OP went to a dentist in a metropolitan area for the first time. The dentist's first reaction upon seeing their retainer was, can I ask you a question? What the hell is that?" It turns out, the retainer was some kind of prototype, so rare that the dentist had never seen it before in his life, not in dental school or in practice. Another user, trying my gosh dang darnest, decided to investigate the story further, and concluded that the town described was likely Tracy, California. They began by looking into the bull attack mentioned in the original post. Tracy was the only town with a matching case. Although the man didn't die from his injuries, everything else lined up almost perfectly. To be sure, they dug deeper and found a case involving a 17-year-old boy who had been tortured but managed to escape and survive, which matched the other case OP mentioned. The user then found a separate case that matched the shooting case OP mentioned. The user combed through more of Tracy's history and found even more disturbing incidents. Most notably, in 2009, 8-year-old Sandra Cantu was kidnapped and murdered by her neighbor, a Sunday school teacher, who later claimed to have no idea why she did it. Then in 2018, 4 underage boys were shot by 4 teenage boys, one of whom died. According to the user, from the outside, Tracy looks like a really cute town, but once you dig deeper, you discover that that's actually not the case. In a reply to the post, OP confirmed they did in fact grow up in Tracy, California. Just as OP mentioned in their post, the town is located near a government testing site. Situated 6 miles outside of Tracy is a government testing lab that has been setting off explosives since 1955. An Anon on 4chan claims he found a fake town last year, something straight out of the Truman Show. It was the summer of 2018. Anon was on a cross-country road trip, hitting up national parks. One night in central or southern Utah, things got weird. It was around 10 p.m. He'd been driving since about 6 p.m. and the night was pitch black. No moon, no street lights, just the road illuminated by headlights. Anon decided to find somewhere to crash for the night and planned to pull off at the next exit. Eventually, he spotted a town glowing faintly in the distance and turned off onto the first pull-off he'd seen in over an hour. The road was completely unmarked and unlit. It didn't show up on the car GPS, and there was no cell service either. Still, the town was clearly visible straight ahead, so he kept going. The road turned to dirt for about 5 miles. Just as it reached the outskirts of the town, it turned back into pavement. Businesses and houses started showing up immediately. That's when Anon realized something was off. The streets were completely empty. No people, no parked cars anywhere. But for some reason, jazz music was being softly pumped through the streets. Not loud, but just loud enough to be heard. From a distance, the town had looked to be about 7 blocks wide, but it had every major fast food chain Anon had ever heard of, and 7 hotels lined up on the main street. Inside the town there was still no cell service and still no GPS location. Anon decided to get some food first. He pulled up to a KFC. The lights were on and the doors unlocked, but the place was completely empty. Same thing at Jack in the Box. He finally tried McDonald's. Inside were 2 workers, a cashier and a cook, both of whom looked visibly annoyed by his presence. They took his order and handed over food that looked like nuggets and fries, which were distinctly non-McDonald's nuggets and fries. Anon left and started looking for a place to sleep. First going to Hampton Inn. The parking lot was empty. Inside, a third annoyed person told him the hotel was fully booked. At La Quinta, the front desk worker looked exactly like the McDonald's cook, now wearing different clothes. The parking lot was also empty, and the hotel was also fully booked. Anon then headed to Holiday Inn Express. The parking lot was also empty. The guy behind the desk was clearly the McDonald's cashier. Surprisingly though, they had rooms available. Anon asked, "Weren't you just at McDonald's?" The guy replied, No, that's my brother." Anon didn't even question it anymore. He took the room. Inside, there was Wi-Fi, but nothing loaded. He showered and crashed for the night. The next morning, there was no breakfast in the lobby and no other guests in sight. Same McDonald's guy was there at the front desk when he checked out. Anon asked him how to get out of the town. The guy simply said, "Same road you came in on." Anon decided to grab something to eat before leaving. The town was still playing smooth jazz. Still no one on the streets. He went through the McDonald's drive-thru. The woman at the window handing him his food looked exactly like the woman from the Hampton Inn. He ordered him a griddle and black coffee. She handed him a microwave egg muffin and what he guessed was instant coffee. At that point, Anon was too weirded out to argue. He got the hell out of there through the only road in and out of town. About 3 miles down the same 5-mile dirt road, he noticed something strange. A big metal wire fence on either side of the road in the middle of the desert, both sides meeting in a large, motorized gate. It was open when he passed through, but as soon as he drove past it, it started closing behind him. Eventually, Anon hit pavement again. A road sign said he was on Route 62, but he could have sworn he turned off from Route 89. Now there were mountains between him and where he remembered coming from. Finally, his phone got service again. He tried to search for the town. Nothing came up. None of the charges from that night ever appeared on his card. He told some friends about the experience. One person suggested it might have been Richfield, but Anon was sure he was farther south, and besides, Richfield would have at least charged him for stuff. A user on Tumblr provided context to the story, claiming that OP stumbled onto a government training site. Major agencies like the FBI and CIA supposedly maintain small, fake, but fully built-in realistic towns for training exercises. According to the user, the people in town were base staff, and they were angry at OP because they'd have to fill long and tedious reports about a civilian getting onto that site. One example of one of these fake towns is the FBI's Hogan's Alley, located in Quantico, Virginia. The town was designed by Hollywood set designers to resemble a real small town, even including a bank, a post office, a hotel, homes, and other facilities. Although most of these are prop-filled sets or disguised academy facilities, the purpose of this town is to train new FBI agents and teach them investigative techniques, firearms skills, and defensive tactics. Actors are hired to play the roles of bad guys, as well as innocent bystanders, while recruits are immersed in diverse scenarios, including criminal investigations, police standoffs, raids, among other things.